Hi, we have come to share a message with you about a dark comedy film called Ronald's Little Factory. Ronald! My name is Brent Bokovoy. I'm a filmmaker from San Diego putting together my first feature film. The film is about a young Mormon in the 1980s who becomes tempted to commit one of the worst known sins to God and mankind.
Within your body, you have the power of creation. When this power begins to form, it might be likened to having a little factory in your body. There is, however, something you should not do. Sometimes a young man does not understand. Perhaps he is encouraged by unwise or unworthy companions to tamper with that factory. He might fondle himself and open that release valve. This you should not do. It is of the devil. Latter-day Saint young men are not to do this. It is of the devil. It is of the devil. It is of the devil. It is of the devil.
This is Infants on Thrones, the philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the Quorum.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 670. Little factories, big screens. And today I have the pleasure of sitting down with filmmaker Brent Bokovoy. Is that how you say your name, Brent? We'll figure it out. He's doing a Kickstarter campaign to try to make the Little Factory story into a movie. We're going to talk about that today, providing a link on the website to go to his Kickstarter campaign. You can see the trailer for yourself and see if it's something that you want to help make happen or not. And yeah, that's what we're going to do today. So let's just turn it over to me and Brent. Come on, me and Brent. Come on, me and Brent. Let's go. So welcome to Infants on Thrones, Brent. How do you pronounce your last name?
Bokovoy.
Bokovoy. What?
Yeah.
Tell me what is the what's Bokovoy? What kind of a name is that?
It's Russian.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Are you one of the bad guys, Brent?
Pretty much. That's what I have a stalker right now that thinks I'm a bad guy. So
Really? You've got a stalker?
yeah, I've put up my movie, and I knew I was going to get stalkers, but I've got one he's been stalking me for the last week.
Which movie is this?
Ronald's Little Factory.
Oh, okay.
So I put up Ronald's Little Factory, my crowdfunding Kickstarter page. I actually put that up on YouTube, on a Utah filmmaker page. Mm-hmm. And this guy that saw it there is just going crazy. And he's an active church member, but he's started his own post. He posted about 10 times on I haven't responded one time. He's literally spent about 20 messages publicly, and then he's sent me multiple private messages. I haven't responded to him one time. And so he's obviously not very happy about it.
I'm kind of jealous, Brent, because like I've been doing Infants on Thrones for 8 years now. I don't have a stalkers that I know of.
I should send his.
I don't want them though. I don't want.
You don't
stalkers.
Want them?
No, I don't want stalkers.
I should really send this guy that your shows.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a mark of accomplishment that you've got a stalker though.
Well, I wanted to ask him. I was seriously going to ask him how much he would pay to be or how much he would charge for him to be my publicist, because he's gotten several people that were interested just because of the crazy stuff he
That's
said.
Funny. All right. Well, so you mentioned Ronald's Little Factory, and so tell me, what is that? What is Ronald's Little Factory? Why is this something that would garner you stalker status?
Okay, so I know that you are very familiar with the Boyd K. Packer Little Factory talk that
yes. Yeah.
You guys did a show on that several years ago.
Yeah.
And so
6 years ago, man. It was
crazy.
6 years ago. It was 2014 in July when that came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in 1976, Boyd K. Packer gave this talk to young men only about how young men should never touch their little factories. He talked to just anti-masturbation talk, and most of it is hilarious and very silly.
It's kind of an anti-humanity talk in a sense as well.
Oh yeah, in what way?
Well, it's just such a natural thing to masturbate. To demonize it the way that he did is like you're denying a part of your own humanity with it, and it's making you think that it's bad.
And it's just so silly. Like when he likens men's reproductive systems to little factories, and just makes the entire talk just hilarious.
Yes.
And so,
when did you first come across that little factories talk?
I always heard about it as kind of rumor. I saw a couple minutes as a kid, and I heard about that. It was always kind of funny. I never saw the pamphlet. Did you see the pamphlet?
No.
The actual pamphlet? Oh, I would have loved.
No. I don't think so.
I've seen stuff online where people are selling it, and I would love to buy an original copy of the pamphlet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I didn't become really aware of it until just like 3 years ago. My friend, one of my best friends from high school, we wrote a screenplay together. It was a short screenplay on Joseph Smith and the Helen Mar Kimball whole scenario. And it's like 15-page screenplay. And then we decided we really liked the script, and then we decided to come up with another kind of Mormon-based film. And it actually started out as kind of a challenge because my friend Ryan Williamson, he said, I think we could do any genre except for perhaps comedy. And I said, oh, I love dark comedy. I would love to do a dark comedy. And he was asking so I've been doing short films for several years, and he just kind of started at that time. And so he was asking about dark comedy, and I said, oh, dark, like what's dark comedy? He asked, and I said, oh, and then just kind of the top of my head, I imagine like someone tries like really hard not to masturbate and like they cut off their hand or something like that.
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like that sparked an idea, and he said, oh, it's kind of reminds me of
but then they end up masturbating with like both of their elbows, right?
Yeah. So he actually reminded me about the talk, the Boyd K. Packer talk, and I said, oh, that's brilliant. Maybe we can come up with something with that. And then so I basically wrote probably a 3-page screenplay from that, and it was funny. And then I shelved it for a year or so, and then I was trying to work on some other film projects, and it required more money. And then it just dawned on me, I thought I need to make a movie that just takes place in one room, shoot like in 10 days. What could I make? And then all of a sudden I thought back to that little factory, that 3-minute screenplay. I thought, man, if I could just put that into like an 80-page screenplay, a full-length screenplay, that short film. And I just spent about 6 months writing the 80-page screenplay to Ronald's Little Factory. And what really got me got it from the short screenplay so the original short screenplay was just Ronald. He was watching this 19-year-old boy named Ronald. He watched Boyd K. Packer's talk, and then he ended up also reading the Mark E Petersen pamphlet that talks about how if you are tempted to masturbate, you can handcuff your hand to the bed or tie it to the bed. So that's what he does in the original screenplay, and he spends a couple minutes doing that, and then his mom comes in, and then she freaks out, and that's the end of the screenplay, the original one. And so with the way I expanded it, I started I thought, what would happen if like it continues? Like what would the mom say? Okay, the mom calls up the Relief Society president. Relief Society president is crazy, and then she calls up the home teacher, and then it keeps on and on. And so that's what the whole movie they're calling up all the crazy members from the church to come help him. And what really helped me write the feature was when I thought of in the original short script, it was a few months before his mission, but then I came with the idea of a ticking time bomb. What if he has to be at the airport in 2 hours and he's handcuffed to the bed? So that's what the whole movie is about. Like, yeah, so he's handcuffed and he has to be at the airport in 2 hours. So it's all like a crazy mess.
And why again is he handcuffed to the bed?
Because he wants to keep himself from masturbating, just like
he's following the Mark E Petersen recommendations.
Yeah.
Do you go through all of them? Like he sings hymns to himself, and he's like getting a midnight snack. And
I don't do the midnight snack, but I go through the hymns, and of course, what hymn does he choose? He randomly puts on Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and guess what? It's Hold to the Rod.
Oh no.
So he starts singing that, and then he starts like Hold to the Rod, and then like he obviously starts to subconsciously think, and then he puts that off, and then of course the other great part is of the pamphlet talks about how think of if you're tempted to masturbate, maybe you need to think of yourself in a bathtub full of worms. So
do you have that scene in your script where he's actually in a bathtub with a bunch of worms?
Not a bathtub, but I have where he reads the worm part, and then he pulls out his desk and he has a little cup of worms, and he puts it in his hands and starts like imagining.
No,
that's the most. Does that pamphlet really exist, or is that just a total rumor?
Well, here's my theory, and I was involved in an episode of Mormon Expression many years ago where we talked about this Mark E Petersen thing, and it created quite a conflict between me and the host of that podcast, because I was like this broken record that was saying, hey, with my degree in folklore, I can see all of the signs of this being a fabrication. Because when I was doing research for that podcast, I found, 5 or 6 different websites that all had the list of the things that supposedly came from the Mark E Petersen pamphlet, but the websites didn't agree. Like some of them had 19 steps, some of them had 23 steps, some of them had 21 steps, and the wording was slightly off with each one of them. So it started looking to me like this was something that had been fabricated, especially because the church denies that there was ever an actual pamphlet that they did or that Mark E Petersen did. But then there are missionaries that have said, hey, I had this in my mission. Somebody gave this to me. My thought is that it's probably what's called Xerox lore, where somebody created something and it got passed around in the mission and people had it. But I seriously doubt that it's something that was really authored by Mark E Petersen. It seems so over the top. It seems to me like it was probably authored by somebody who was critical of the Mormon Church rather than somebody who was actually, these are really good suggestions for what you should do. So I'm a little dubious about its authenticity, but it's definitely fun. And it certainly reflects very real attitudes that members of the church have about masturbation. So there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think that could be very true. I think it could be totally fabricated, but I don't care because it's so
it's great.
It's so great, and it's it's based on some truth, and I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of it is true. If even if it's not like the official pamphlet, I'm sure there was some things that were said that were very similar.
And there are people who have treated it like it's real, like it's something that's coming from the Lord's anointed, so it fits a worldview for sure. Yeah. So you've filmed a little bit of this. You've created a Kickstarter campaign, and how long is that going? You've got.
It's going on for a month. I've put it up a week ago, so it's going on another 3 weeks. Yeah.
What date does it end?
I believe it is August 7th.
Okay.
And so I shot about a 3.5 minute proof of concept about 7-8 months ago, and then I just did a video of just me posed as a missionary talking about it, and it's on Kickstarter under Ronald's Little Factory.
Yeah, and you've already got some people that have been sending in some donations, but about 10% of the way there, or maybe around there. So would encourage listeners to go. I'll put a link on the website infantsonthrones.com. I'll put a link under this episode to your Kickstarter campaign, so people can go and take a look at it and see if it's something they want to contribute to or not. And you've got different rewards and tiers for people, right?
Yeah, all starts from $5 to a few thousand. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, some of the rewards I'm really excited about. I want to ideally to premiere this in this next springtime, and I would like to have it have several theatrical showings in Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be fun to have a dozen or so, and have each one hosted by someone in the post-Mormon world.
Yeah.
And perhaps I come there and do a question and answer with the audience. Yeah, so hopefully doing that. So that's one of the rewards is for $50 have 2 tickets come out there for premiere, and
Cool.
you also get a couple other things with it.
Nice. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about your background, Brent, and like growing up in the church and just that whole spiel. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was raised in San Diego, and I was raised as an active Mormon, and I went on a mission to Seattle for 2 years, and I came back when I was 21, very active. In fact, I was so strong at that time. I remember even telling someone that I don't even care if Gordon B. Hinckley came out today and said that the church was not true.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, it's in my heart. I remember saying that right after my mission. I was so strong.
Yeah, I remember saying the exact same thing to people when I was a seminary student before my mission. Like, if President Hinckley came out, or whoever the prophet was at the time, and said that the Book of Mormon wasn't true, I wouldn't believe him, because I know that strongly.
Yeah.
I was right there
you
with
know
you,
it. Yeah, you know it. That's crazy. And so to kind of back up a little bit, when I first started going on my mission, I felt like I knew. I was probably an average 19-year-old Mormon. I felt like I knew a little bit less than probably most Mormons at that time. And so I remember I was in probably 2 or 3 months on the mission, and a former missionary companion left an anti book. So it was, talking about all the things that anti-Mormons talk about, but it was, of course, refuting it. Something maybe from Farms or something, but I haven't heard of any of this. Like it, of course, the Adam God theory and the multiple visions of Joseph Smith. Like, I was just blown away. But of course, I read right away, apologists, defending those. But I was still in my mind. I think it planted a tiny bit of little things. But anyways, I was still, of course, I loved my mission. I was very active when I got back. And about a year into my mission, a year after my mission, I was at the temple, and I never felt comfortable in the temple. I always thought the temple was just felt weird.
Really? I freaking loved the temple, man.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like, did you feel like you were prepared? Did you know much going in?
So my approach to Mormonism was always that kind of God had created this scavenger hunt of hiding like truth in plain sight everywhere, and the people that were most interested in finding it would be the ones that would find it and get rewarded. And so I was always looking for these clues. And when I would go through the temple, I thought, oh my gosh, there's so much truth that's just hidden in plain sight here. Like Lucifer saying, I'm only doing that which has been done on other worlds. What's that? There's this whole story about other worlds that this open, like, that's amazing. What is that about? And what does it mean that he's doing what was done on other worlds, but now he's being punished for it? So like there were these little things that who knows where it actually came from or why it showed up in the temple movie, but my active imagination would take that stuff and just run with it. And so yeah, I thought that the whole, you've got your new name, here are the handshakes, we're preparing you for further light and knowledge. And like, yeah, sign me up. I want further light and knowledge. I'm all for it. So yeah, I was a little uncomfortable with the washings and anointings or whatever, like having to be naked and have people put their hands on me at first. But yeah,
that was my least favorite part. Like, I didn't understand. Like, I'd never had anyone see me naked, and so it's just a sheet. Right. And it certainly could have been better if I would have thought of this. But like, when you sit down, like you should like tuck the sheet, like kind of into your lap.
Yeah.
I didn't like.
You didn't have experience wearing a dress,
no,
so you didn't know.
I've never worn a dress, so it went from like my neck to my knees, like with like a 2-foot like opening, so everyone could see me naked. So it just felt so awkward and silly. And so I always felt, even on my mission, like I didn't love the temple, but I probably only went to the temple 3 or 4 times on my mission. But I remember probably a year after my mission, like the very first time that I ever thought of something that's kind of against church teachings was I was in the sealing room, and I was in the San Diego temple, and look, it's very I don't know what the word the word I want to say is gaudy.
Yeah.
It's just like,
yeah,
you're underneath a $500,000 chandelier, looking at just everyone in just crazy dressed in white. These, to me everything looked silly, and for some reason I just thought of, I feel more at peace with God out in the mountains than underneath this $500,000 chandelier. And that was the very first time I thought, if I feel like that, then maybe there's other things that are against the church that I would feel positive about too.
And that was probably like long before you ever even tried mushrooms.
How did you know?
I'm just assuming. God out in nature. What?
Oh,
what?
Man, that'll be a different podcast.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Cool. So then what made you leave, Brent?
Well, so that was the very first inkling that I had. And so basically I spent a year of my life just, praying, reading, and just deciding, is this something that I truly believe in, or is this something that I was told to believe in? So
it really kind of started with it being in the celestial room,
totally.
Seeing the gaudiness of all of it and going, is God really gaudy? See what I did there?
Exactly. Well, it's funny that the first time I went to the temple, like, we were always told how evil, in the 80s and 90s, we were told how evil the Catholics were, like that they're so gaudy and everything.
Ostentatious and showing, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. I mean, I hope you use that line in the Ronald's.
That is brilliant. I need to. So we were always taught that. And then when I go to the temple, I thought, this doesn't look like us. This looks like the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And so that set me down the rabbit hole for probably a year and a half of getting books and praying. And literally I came to the conclusion that it's just something that I was just ingrained. And so I started with a blank slate, and it was honestly, it wasn't a happy time for a few years there. It just, because like the rug was pulled underneath my feet. I felt like my first 23 years of life, I know exactly why I'm here, where I'm going. I'm going to have my own planet, multiple wives, spiritual babies for eternity.
Did you really think that you were like looking forward to a polygamous eternity?
Oh, totally. You didn't?
Really? No.
Yes, that was the best part of Mormonism, and I hear they took that away.
Yeah.
They disowned that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, the polygamy stuff always made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it was 2003, did you say? That's when you...
Yeah, it was right about when I was 20, about 24. And so I was the perfect Mormon boy, and...
Oh, see, I know what I was going to say. You said that the rug was being pulled out from under you, but you were the one doing it. You were the one that was pulling the rug yourself, right?
Not necessarily.
Oh, come on.
So I've gotten into this discussion a lot with people before. Like, I didn't choose that. Like, you don't suddenly choose to stop believing in Santa Claus. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So I didn't choose that. So I just felt like the rug was pulled under. Like, I didn't do it. If I could have chosen, I probably would have stayed in the church.
I don't know.
Nice.
I used to think that too. I've changed my view on that. I think that there were things about the church that you recognized you were not comfortable with, that they weren't really what you were told. And so you had this cognitive dissonance, and you're like, I gotta square this away. I gotta figure out what's going on. But it was your own desire to find peace and harmony within your own psyche that was driving you the whole time. And I don't know, I think that's what it was with me. And the more I asked and the more I found out it really wasn't kind of what I thought, the more uncomfortable I was for a while. Eventually I got comfortable with uncertainty and creating a new worldview. But
when did you leave?
Oh boy, there's no date on it. I
before me, or?
in 2003, I was in a PhD program studying folklore at Indiana University, and by this time, pretty much it had crumbled away. I stopped attending. Like, I started going part-time. Maybe in 2007, I was going to sacrament meeting and not the rest. But I had a long, slow burn out where I was compartmentalizing things. I was reinterpreting, going, okay, well, this stuff I believe in, like charity, love, being Christ-like, whatever that means. But when it's like judging other people, and I always had an issue with that. So I compartmentalized for a long time. And then, probably 2007 stopped. But in 2003, I was kind of mentally out. One of my favorite things to do was as a gospel doctrine teacher, was to look up really controversial things. Like I would go onto the internet, even though it was kind of early at that time, and find some anti-Mormon arguments and bring those into the gospel doctrine class as a way to like kind of inoculate us, kind of like that anti thing that you read on your mission, like that's what I wanted to do. Like one of them I remember specifically was saying Mormons, they don't know it, but they worship Lucifer more than they worship Jehovah, because the whole plan of salvation wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Lucifer tempting Adam and Eve in the garden. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that claim and I'm going to show how it's flawed. and I would do that in gospel doctrine, and it had a mixed reaction. But so I would think I was kind of a nuanced believer for a long time. But I still feel like I was the one that was making those choices of what I was comfortable with and what I wasn't comfortable with, what I liked about the church and what I didn't like about the church, until it got to a point where I just didn't want to go anymore. And for me, the main reason was I recognized that I was being super judgmental of these people that I actually cared about. I actually really liked them, but I couldn't listen to them spout nonsense and not think that they were stupid. And I hate, like, I'd leave church going, ugh, I felt like shit because of that.
So could you choose to go back?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, let me say something. Could you choose to believe again?
Sure.
Really?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I believe the power of the mind is so, like, the mind is pretty malleable, and with confirmation bias, anything's possible. If I wanted to, if my desire was strong enough, I could deceive myself.
Wow.
I think so. I think we all can. I think that's why it's important to always stay vigilant and true and honest, and have a lot of integrity, surrounding yourself with people who keep you in check. But yeah, I think if I wanted to, I could, but I don't.
Yeah.
I know people who have.
Yeah, I mean, if there's reason, I mean, for like family, spouse type of reasons, but I have a hard time believing that you could force, or at least myself, like, sure, yeah, I could go tomorrow, but I just couldn't force myself to.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
I couldn't make myself believe again. Like it's.
I don't think you could do it like overnight.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
It means setting small, reasonable goals for yourself. One tiny step at a time.
Baby steps.
But like you do the Bob Wiley. This is What About Bob?
Baby steps.
Baby steps. Oh boy.
Baby stepping going to church, baby stepping wanting to believe it, baby stepping like being okay with Joseph Smith, I think you could baby step your way back into
You can, but then once you can baby step yourself, but then once that final decision, like, oh, I believe again, that's still not like a choice.
It works. It works. All I have to do is take one little step at a time, and I can do anything.
Like what I always say is, like when I'm talking kind of about this, what we choose to like or believe in, like I would, people will bring up, or like I'll say, like you can't choose what food you like. You don't choose what music you like. You don't choose.
See, I think you do.
Religion.
I think you do, but I think it's a long process.
Well, okay. So, like,
this is fun, Brent.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting this. Let's bring it. I love it.
Yeah, to me, like the Doors are like one of the greatest bands of all time.
Okay.
I can't tonight, like you could put a gun to my head and say, like Justin Bieber more than the Doors. I will say, of course I like Justin Bieber more, but in my heart and my mind, I will not like him more.
Yeah.
Like it's just what feels good to me. What makes sense. Same thing with like, I like Mexican food. I don't like sushi. I'm crazy. I don't like seafood, but I don't choose that. It's just like what makes sense to my soul, my body. And that's what I think the same thing with religion. Like I can't choose to believe in Santa Claus.
You're going to get me on a huge tangent here, which I'm fine with. I think what you're saying is I can't consciously choose it. And I think there's a difference between the conscious awareness that we have and subconscious processes that are the bulk of that make us up. And so I think in the past, I'd be really interested to find out more about why you love the Doors so much. And I imagine it's because you had, like the first time you heard them, there was stuff going on in your life that was really good. And that music made you feel really good. And as a result, the memories that you store in your mind associating that music is really, really good stuff, because we file memories based on feelings. Mm-hmm. And if, like, I don't know what your first experience was with sushi, but I would imagine there was something that was pretty disgusting around it. And as a result, you're like, fuck that, I'm not going to try this anymore. And so there's like these subconscious things. But if you wanted to like sushi and you gave it an effort and you started putting yourself in situations where there's all this awesome stuff going around it, you could condition yourself to like sushi.
You're right. You can condition yourself, but that is different than once you condition yourself, like the final step is you don't make that choice. So
you are making that choice.
You're making
conditioning
that choice
yourself.
You're making that choice for the baby steps to condition yourself, but you're not making that choice, the final choice to like it. So I'll bring up beer.
Okay.
Most people, I didn't like beer at first.
Right.
I hated it.
Me too.
The second time, the third time, but like you kind of like the feeling. It gets you buzzed. The 5th, 10th, 20th time, eventually, like, oh, this isn't bad. 30th time, like I conditioned myself. Most people condition themselves. Like I like beer, but that 30th time where I said, oh my gosh, this is good. I didn't choose on that 30th time to say that it was good. I didn't choose to say to myself it was good. It just felt good to my body and soul that 30th time.
Now I'm going to make a guess here, Brent, and I could be wrong, but I think the reason that you became a filmmaker is probably it's either because of Saturday's Warrior.
Who are these children coming down?
Or My Turn on Earth.
Once upon a time there was heaven and earth. That's how it all began.
A joke here.
Yeah,
but if you know My Turn on Earth, there's a song that says,
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe, you can choose the way to go.
When you choose the very first step on the road, you also choose the last.
I don't like to study and I don't like to learn. Books are such a big bore. I don't care if I go to school. I'm not gonna try anymore. I don't like to get up and I love sleeping in. All I wanna do is to play. I'll lie around the house till noon and wear my pajamas all day.
When you choose the very first step on the road, you also choose the last. So if you don't like the end of the road, you better back up, you know you better back up fast.
The end of this road is to be dumb.
So if you don't like the end of the road, you better back up. You better back up fast. Do you know My Turn on Earth?
Oh, I haven't seen that since
yeah,
ever,
right.
So, but yeah.
But so I think what we're saying here is there are these choices that we make that are going to lead us in certain directions, and it might not be. What was it? The last thing you said, the 30th time that you drank the beer, that's when you make the decision that you like it?
No, you don't make the decision. It just feels good. So like your body, like your soul, your body, it just makes sense to you.
But no one put a gun to your head to drink that first beer or the second or the third or the fourth. You are exercising your agency. I know that's a bad word anymore, but you're the one that's doing it. And I think it's the same thing with leaving the church or staying in the church or taking up tennis or becoming a Beatles fan or loving the Doors or, like anything like this. Like we're constantly, in any moment that we're in, we're bombarded with all of this sensory data from the outside world, and our brains are comparing what's coming in with everything that's similar that we've ever had. And if we had these negative experiences with something, then we're going to associate that as a negative thing. Is that us choosing or not choosing? I think if we go, oh, I don't like that, I'm going to avoid that, then we're making a conscious choice to avoid it. And we're saying, oh, I don't like it. But I think that there's wiggle room to go, I'm going to give this a chance. I'm going to do something different. And anyway, this is a big tangent.
No, it's so you're of the opinion that you can choose to believe in God or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I think if you straddle that line of, I'm not sure either way you could kind of choose, but I can't choose to believe in the man in the sky as much as I
right.
If I'm not saying I want to, but as much as if I wanted to or needed to, like I just like the Santa Claus thing, like I can't choose to believe in Santa. It just doesn't make logical sense for supernatural Santa Claus.
Sure. You can't choose at this point to believe in Santa Claus. And maybe if God, you're talking about this bearded man in the sky that punishes people like Ronald for masturbating, I'll bring it back. Then, like, can you just choose to believe in that if you recognize, no, that's kind of impossible. That's kind of improbable. It's kind of impossible. But I think that, again, the principle of confirmation bias is at play. And so if we've made some assumptions and we're kind of going in that direction, we're going to keep going in that direction, be blinded to anything that would put us in another direction. For me, the question of God, to even put myself in a place where I could try to believe in it, I had to get rid of certain things. Like if you're defining God as a man in the sky with a beard, then we're not talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about some kind of force that exists that is creative and omnipotent and omniscient and is everything that the problem of evil says that it is, so isn't out there trying to keep people safe, isn't trying to help people find their keys, but that there's still this like creative, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent force that's everywhere. I can believe in something like that, or I don't even know the word believe. I can be open to the possibility of something like that.
Well, that's why I consider myself agnostic, because I think there could be something out there. I just disbelieve in the man in the sky that we were all taught about. Yeah. So that Mormon God kind of thing. Well, what a fun tangent that was to go on with you, Brent. So, for some reason, I was thinking, one of the last time that I actually prayed to God, and that actually got me like my final straw. After I spent about a year and a half deciding, reading, praying, like I decided to give one more shot to pray to God. I went out in the mountains and literally I spent all day. I was like, Are we going back to the mushrooms again now? Is this that? No, mushrooms. Mushrooms are much after the. So I spent all day on my knees, and I felt like I wanted to give everything to God. So I literally took off all my clothes,
Wow.
completely naked,
Wow.
in the mountains, miles from my house, literally 8-9 hours on my knees. I felt like I was going to either see an angel or walk out of there and be an ex-Mormon. So obviously,
was that the Enos story from the Book of
Yeah.
Mormon?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Enos.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were doing the penis version of the Enos story.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, that was 15, 16 years ago, and then I didn't think about Mormonism. I pushed Mormonism, ex-Mormonism, everything to the side until just last year and a half or so, and
so what?
started
Wait,
writing the story.
but what was your conclusion after your penis experience? Your penis in the mountains?
My conclusion that, well, I didn't see an angel, so I walked out of there as an ex-Mormon, and I walked down the hills, and I was devastated. Just as I said, the rug was pulled underneath my feet.
Did you choose that?
No, I don't think I chose that.
You chose that the criteria for accepting God was to see an angel or not.
Yeah, they chose not to send me an angel, so I guess I chose to walk down there, an ex-Mormon.
Yeah.
So for 15, 16 years, I didn't think about Mormon, anything. And then it's such a weird thing to come back after that time and start, exploring the crazy world of Mormonism again in the last year and a half.
So tell me the word crazy in there. Why do you throw crazy in there as in crazy world of Mormonism?
What else would you say with what Mormonism is, especially the early days? I mean, it's just so interesting and crazy that, like, the way we were all raised, and it's so different than what the young generation for the last 20 years has been raised on. Ours was just so esoteric, just so crazy, weird, multiple gods, planets, and just so, I mean, it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Joseph Smith a lot of the stories are fascinating.
Yeah. When I mentioned earlier that I was in graduate school, I was studying folklore and mythology, and for I was in a PhD program, which I didn't finish, but I was writing a dissertation on Mormon humor. And during my research, I interviewed these comedians that did gigs in Utah and in other places. And I asked them, like, okay, so you've got to see that there's, like, definitely a difference between Mormon audiences and other audiences. And I forget who it was, but he's like, you know what? There really isn't. He goes, I changed the specifics of my material when I go to Utah a little bit, because at the level of details, there's some differences, but like the thematic, like that, when you scale back the higher themes, it's all pretty similar. Like with other Christians in the Bible Belt that don't have sex, that are like vilifying people that aren't like them, that think that they are the ones that have the whole truth and that God's on their side and not on other people's side. It's really not that unique. He goes, but Mormons sure like to think that it is. They sure like to think of themselves as being unique, but I don't see them as being very unique. That was eye-opening to me. And maybe that was just this one guy's opinion. I don't know. But yeah, I think the Mormonism is really interesting, and you can say crazy and stuff, but I don't think it's that different than what other people experience, just in different kind of packages, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all crazy. Humans are crazy. All beliefs are crazy. I'm crazy. What's funny is I was watching that video of you guys on YouTube of when you guys are at Sunstone, and someone brought up that you were like halfway done with your dissertation.
Oh yeah. Which one was this? Was this when we did Mo Side Out? Like the
I don't know. It was like 5 years ago.
Okay. I think there are 2 videos on YouTube. Maybe there's a different one.
But they said, so you're almost finished, or you decided to give up on your dissertation on Mormon humor, and like everyone laughed. I thought it was a joke. So it was serious. You really did that, huh?
I really did. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I went to work for a medical device company because they were offering to give me a good salary and send me to Japan, which is where I served my mission, and I wanted to go back. So I took that instead of staying in academia, basically.
So in your emails, you said that you've really kind of changed in the last 5 or 6 years since that the original Little Factory kind of evolved or grown. In what way have you grown as far as an ex-Mormon?
Well, I think the question that I asked you about crazy probably illustrates that. Is, you know, like when we started Infants on Thrones 8 years ago, it was so much fun to be able to point out all these ridiculous things and just to like beat the drum of stupid. Look how stupid this is. Look how stupid that is. And we did a lot of like every general conference would do our own parrot episodes, which were a lot of fun. But after a while of doing that, I started feeling bad. I started feeling bad, like I was, because I knew that, like I knew the whole time that the things that people were doing were sacred to them and special to them, and here I'm just making fun of it as if they're stupid. And I didn't like it when I would see ex-Mormons who just would take things that I had created, and it looked to me like they were just banging this drum of stupid. So it kind of made me reflect on like, what do I really think? What am I doing? Is this productive or constructive at all? And so I got more interested in doing things that are uplifting. You know, like it's weird because I don't know how to say this, Brent. I don't think that the Mormon Church is awesome, but I also don't think that the Mormon Church is as bad as a lot of people say. But it's because of these things that we talked about. If we have a choice, I mean, I think if you recognize there's bigotry in the Mormon Church and you're not comfortable with that, that's something to be grateful for. Well, thank you, Mormon Church, for showing me I don't want to be a bigot. I don't want to be a racist. I don't want to be a misogynist. I don't want to live a life of patriarchy. And so I started looking at it as more something to be grateful for than just to say this is awful and it's ruined my life. That's probably the biggest thing. I just became more aware and more sensitive of what is the overall message, and is it constructive or is it just destructive? And again, I think that destructive is really important if the church has a hold on you, and you've got to cut those ties. And I think humor and mocking and ridicule, you're not able to do it if there's a really close psychic tie or psychological tie, emotional tie to Mormonism. And so humor, mockery, ridicule, things like that can help loosen that up. But I also think it's important to recognize the value and the importance, so that you don't go through life hating this part of who you were for so long, and thinking that it's wrong and that it's bad, and you know.
So what has been the input from your viewers? Has there been many negative, positive?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the audience has dropped over time, but we've been doing, and I say we, it's mainly me now. There were 6 of us when it started. But yeah, we don't have as many listeners as we used to. But I, you know, if you look on iTunes and you see what our reviews are and have been over the years, they're overall positive. That people appreciate hearing discussion that's fair minded, and also makes them feel like the thoughts that they had, they're not alone, they're not crazy with it. So
yeah, what I told you a bit in the email is like I have no desire to, the point is not to mock Mormonism. I love a lot of my family is still active and I love them, and I have no desire to mock just religion or people's beliefs. Just having fun with the culture of Mormonism, and it's literally inspired by me as an awkward teen Mormon boy that tries so hard to stay on the straight and narrow. And it's like I was saying, like the most blasphemous part in it that would be is Ronald has a nightmare version. He has a nightmare of several of the church members coming in there, and they're in their temple clothing, and they perform they're slitting
True order of prayer.
Well, no, just the death, the slit in throat.
Oh wow,
the penalty, and like that's obviously it's considered, I guess, quote, blasphemous, but I'm not trying to do that to mock. Like it's only doing that because that makes sense in the story. That's the story of Ronald. He's literally just went to the temple and he's having these nightmare versions of what he feels guilt.
Are you old enough to have actually experienced that in the temple?
Okay. No, I didn't. They changed that.
Yeah.
I definitely remember the naked part, but not the death part.
Yeah, they changed they took that part out a little bit before I went through too, so I never experienced that.
So the movie takes place in 1989, and so that's
gotcha.
So it just made that's just. I'm not trying to make it to mock it at all. It's just the story of Ronald, and this is what I feel needs his story.
Well, and something that you said about yourself, I think you said you wanted to be a good guy. You wanted to stay on the straight and narrow, and that's kind of the way that I've tried to start looking at all members of the church and the leadership, and really, I mean, whether you're in the church or you're not Mormon, that everybody's born into this world at a place of innocence. Like you just want to love, and you want to be loved by the people around you. And so you're taught how to do that. You're taught what's right, you're taught what's wrong, and you're taught by people who don't really know. So you're misguided from the very, very start. And everybody's misguided in different directions. We were misguided by the Mormon doctrines and raised to think, oh, this is the right way to be, without recognizing there's harm that we do to ourselves, harm that we do to other people, because we're just, like you said, trying to do the best we can and follow the straight and narrow. And some people take it to these really gross extremes, and other people are able to go, oh wait, I don't want to do this anymore, and break out of it. But everybody at their core is that innocent person who was misguided through, and that makes me want to give them more of the benefit of the doubt. And so when I watched your trailer today that's on the GoFundMe, I think the thing that first jumped out to me was you standing in the doorway, the twin yous, as you were yourself and your companion, and the companion that doesn't speak just has like this almost kind of crazy smile of like, like
that's just me, man. That's how I always look. What are you trying to say?
But it's very much like the kind of Book of Mormon musical, naive elder that just like everything's happy, everything's smiling, and that really jumped out to me when I watched that. And I was wondering what were you trying to do? Were you trying to send any of those kinds of messages, or was that really just you, just like, hey? I
think I was just trying to do my serial killer smile.
Serial killer smile. Yeah. It worked.
Nice.
It worked. That was cool.
No, actually, there was. I do see what you're saying, because there was one part like that I edited out. Like it was just too much. Like I did have that too much of the zombie stare, and like I didn't want to go for that. Honestly, I was kind of going for more of a creepy, crazy, instead of a mocking like zombie, like dumb. I wanted to go for that weird, like basically me, this weird guy.
And
minus the serial killer part.
And every viewer of this is going to bring their own experience to it, right? So you can't make something that's the same thing for everybody. And then I really liked that guy who played Ronald.
He was good, huh?
He is good. He's good.
So I'm actually gonna get someone else though.
Oh, okay.
He just joined the union, and we're gonna do non-union shoot. So, but I think I have someone else that I love too, and he actually looks similar to this guy.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be great. Also, but I love the mom did awesome, and the Relief Society president was really creepy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. I just shot all in my bedroom in just one day. The 3.5 minute.
Wow. Cool. Cool. All right. So we've been talking for about an hour here. There was something else. You've got a brother, David Bokovoy?
Yeah, David Bokovoy. That's my older brother. He's been working for the church for about 20 years.
What did he do for the church?
He did CES, and he's written a couple books, and so he actually just did a podcast with John DeLynn about a year ago, like right after he officially left the church. And he actually kind of mentally left the church after the 2015 November policy.
Oh, yeah.
About the gay children, because he has a gay child, and he just decided to choose his child instead of the church.
Yeah. And
so I think that was amazing. And interesting thing too about him, I actually made a word video based on an experience that he had with the bishop. You can find this video on YouTube if you look up the title, "My Mormon Bishop Taught Me How to Masturbate." And it's not quite as crazy as the title sounds, but basically when he was 12 years old, when he got the priesthood, or an interview with the priesthood, the bishop asked him if he ever masturbated, and my brother had no idea what it was, and he asked what it was, and the bishop described in detail what it was. And of course my brother was embarrassed. He had no idea that you can do that. He was crying because he was so embarrassed, and he left humiliated, never done that in his life. And that was the first time that anyone has ever told him what masturbation is and how to do it. And it's very disturbing, and it's disturbing that still happens. So I hope, and I know obviously there's people out there that are trying to change it right now, and I hope that things like that change. And I hope there's my movie's it's a comedy, it's a dark comedy, but there's a couple of things I would like to kind of bring up some serious discussions about that, and a few other things that are going on in the church. Yeah. And it would be nice if there was some serious discussion about that from the movie.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I wish you luck with it. And like I said, I'll post a link to your Kickstarter campaign on the website, so any listener who's interested can go and find that. Are there any closing words of wisdom that you'd like to share with listeners?
I had to ask, who did the impression of Boy K. Packer on that show that you guys did?
That was me.
Oh my! You got to do it. You got to close it out with the show. That was amazing.
It's been a long time since I've done any kind of Boy K. Packer. I don't. Why would our loving Heavenly Father do that to anybody?
I don't know. It's just it's kind of like Froggy from the Little Rascals, and like without really moving the mouth,
you just kind of have to have like a lazy.
I don't know what.
I might honestly have to get you, because I wondered about like when I put this out in the world, is the LDS Church, are they going to come out to me and say I can't put that? I got to have I literally have Boy K. Packer from Georgia.
Well, see, but I'm old decrepit. Like when I do that, it's the old decrepit. The one from the 70s,
he's much more young and dynamic, and it's kind of more up here. Like, he could talk about a little factor.
Maybe I could do some voiceover work for you, Brent. But
I might need it.
All right.
When the church comes knocking, I'll come out for you.
Yeah. I like my Monson a little bit better, but ever since he passed, my brothers and sisters, it's all about a sing-song with President Monson, and it's all about the tone of his voice. That kind
That's incredible. What else do you do?
Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
Rousers.
I'm so grateful. I thank the boys who kicked my ass when I was 17. I thank the ones who chose to laugh and those who acted mean. I thank the bullies for all their scraps and accidents and then some. They shaped my life. They made me like who I've become. They shaped my life. They made me love who I am.
This is your brother, and I have something to say concerning these people. If they do not listen to every minute of every episode of Infants on Thrones, they shall be totally missing out. You can comment on this episode on the website infantsonthrones.com. And if you really like what you hear, give the quorum money. They could buy anything in this world with money. On second thought, just give the quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes. I did. A small token for which they have pledged their eternal souls. Anyone for the closing prayer?
And hey, why not? For a bonus Easter egg, you want to listen to that Mormon Expression episode about the Mark E Petersen where John Larson got really mad at me because I was being kind of obnoxious? You want to hear me be kind of obnoxious? Even more than I've already been kind of obnoxious? Here's a throwback for those of you curious to hear more about Mark E Petersen and the mysterious pamphlet of suggestions.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Mormon Expression. I'm your host, John Larson, and tonight we have another illustrious panel assembled. Let's go around the circle. First of all, from the netherworld, we have Glenn. Glenn, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me back, John.
Great. Welcome back.
Thanks.
And then around the circle, we have Rich. Hey, Rich.
Hello.
And then we have Zilpha. Hi, Zilpha.
Hello.
Hello. And then we have Robin. Welcome back, Robin.
Hello. So glad I could be here.
Is this number 3?
4, maybe? Yes, I think 3, 4.
All right. And then we have a studio audience. Welcome, studio audience. So tonight we are talking about, most of what we've broadcasted has been sort of well-researched and well-defined. This is the first time we're sort of going off the rails a little bit, and we'll explain that here in just a second. We're going to talk tonight about a infamous, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's been around for a while, and it is generally attributed to Mark E Petersen, and it's his work called Steps in Overcoming Masturbation.
Hey, John, did I ever mention that I'm an academically trained folklorist?
That might have come up.
You don't say.
Yeah. Well, I just thought I'd mention this because we've got a really good example of modern folklore here.
Oh, you mean in the fact that this talk is here at all?
Yeah, this is a perfect example of folklore that exists in multiple variation, which I'm sure you're going to cover, being attributed to an authority figure in Mark E Petersen, and maybe there's a real version out there somewhere, maybe not, but it certainly has its value as a piece of folklore and culture. And I may talk about that a little bit more as we go on. I may not, but I just thought it might be worth mentioning up front.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's should we start with the talk, or should we start with Mark E Petersen? They're both pieces of work.
Start with Mark E Petersen.
All right, so Mark E Petersen was a member of the Quorum of the 12, and he was generally the hitman for the Brethren for quite a while. There's a lot of he worked with the Deseret News and wrote a lot of sort of bombastic statements the church put out. He was a leader in the anti-ERA movement. He was in the Benson camp and was a strong proponent of the Birchers, connected to fluoride is a communist plot, all that sort of anti-hippie thinking. So he does have a history of being sort of this bombastic, over-the-top guy. In fact, he is attributed, and this is probably folklorish again, with saying that he'd been married to his wife for 44 years and he'd never seen her naked. That's your cue, Robin.
That's something I can't even possibly imagine.
So he was sort of a like I said, a hitman of the 12 and a writer. So let's fast forward to 1981 when this thing supposedly happened. And probably the best, most authoritative source on it is from D. Michael Quinn. And he says, well, it comes in a footnote. Actually, at the end of Quinn's book, he's got all these little blurbs about things that happen in history. And I will read you the blurb that Quinn wrote for September 1981. It says, branch presidents at the Missionary Training Center in Provo received a 21-point handout to help both male and female missionaries avoid masturbation. Point 19, in very severe cases, it may be necessary to tie a hand to the bed frame with a tie in order that the habit of masturbation in a semi-sleep condition can be broken. In May 1995, article about masturbation, National Magazine Details published 17 of the recommendations and identified Apostle Mark E Petersen as author of Steps in Overcoming Masturbation, A Guide to Self-Control. In 1996, spokesman at LDS headquarters denied that Elder Petersen authored this document and denied that it was ever distributed. So that's like the most authoritative historical piece of evidence we have on where this thing came from. So if you go look out on the internet, you'll find several different versions of this, and probably some of the discrepancy comes from potentially the original, which I have not seen. So if anybody out there in internet land has an original copy of the letter, we would sure like to get our hands on it. But anyway, apparently the Details magazine, and I could find several references to that article, but I couldn't find it myself from 1995, and that's probably where it has come about. There have been rumors that comes in a pamphlet, and I was able to find on the Snoops website somebody had posted a reference that they got out of the University of Utah library to the pamphlet. But frankly, I don't believe the pamphlet exists. I think that's a figment of somebody's imagination. The pamphlet is supposedly named Keeping Your Hands to Yourself, excerpts from Steps in Overcoming Masturbation, A Guide to Self-Control, pamphlet by the late Elder Mark E Petersen. That's probably the name of the Details article. That doesn't sound like the name of the pamphlet.
No way.
Yeah.
There's no way that's the title. That's too convenient. Keeping your hands to yourself. It's keeping your hands away from yourself is what he's really trying to get to. I think there's no way that's the
Keeping
title.
your hands to yourself. Oh, yeah. Keeping your hands tied to the bedpost.
That's too suspicious.
Yeah, so I'm stating for the record, we do not know for sure if this came from Mark E. Petersen or if this is even real. But I have been quoted some of these things in church auspice, and I don't know if other people have. In talks while I was a missionary. If this thing is not real, it didn't originate with Mormons, it has been adopted by the Mormons.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I saw a site today that's what's it called? Light Planet?
Yes, I have that right here.
Yeah, and this was quoted in that.
Yeah,
so.
they incorporated it and also kind of edited it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I think whether it's real and you can attribute it to Mark E. Petersen or not, as you said, there are certainly flavors of Mormonism in here, and what I prepared as I went through this were actual examples of where I've seen things like this occur in people that I've associated with, whether it's at BYU or in my mission, where I've kind of seen real life examples of this.
You mean people trying to apply these principles?
For the discussion as well, but I don't know.
People trying to put these principles into action?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, ways that they're actually trying to do the steps that are on the list to prevent masturbation. Yeah. I
had a mission companion that did about half of these things nightly.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's alive and well.
It is not well, but it is alive.
Yeah. I mean, it is part of the culture. I mean, the attitudes that are reflected in this document are real, whether the document itself is, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that makes sense.
And besides, it's just a completely fascinating list of things, ways to not masturbate. It's quite fun.
All right, before we get into the what the little letter or pamphlet or whatever the hell it was actually says, let's talk about a really important question, which is why? What I mean, I read you the one that came from the Quinn quote that talked about strapping your wrist to a bedpost. Obviously, these are pretty heady measures that people would take. So the question is, why in the LDS paradigm would such measures need to be taken against something that seems so innocuous?
Innocuous. Well, I've got the miracle of forgiveness here. He talks about how...
Who's he?
Kimball. Talks about how...
And what year was that? I'm sorry. What year was that published? Miracle of Forgiveness. It's 77 is what I had in mind.
69.
Wow. Holy crap.
Ooh. And
69.
depending on which version, they may say very different things.
Oh, okay. So this is the 23rd printing, 1994. But anyway, his idea that he's putting forth in this book is that masturbation can lead to homosexuality. And so this was a big fear for a lot of people that masturbating would cause you to become homosexual. And actually, he says, done in private, I don't know, how many situations you're masturbating not in private, but done in private, it evolves often into mutual masturbation. How do you mutually masturbate in private? But okay, practiced with another person of the same sex, and thence into total homosexuality.
Zilpha, my father-in-law worked vice for the LA County Sheriff, and he would go to these XXX movie theaters where there was, mutual masturbation kind of things that I wouldn't say lead to homosexuality, but where homosexuality is a thing. So that might have been what President Kimball had in mind when he was talking about.
Well, why did he say for done in private, it evolves often into mutual masturbation? I don't understand.
Here's. I mean, he made me think that's what it evolves into, where people attend these XXX theaters and they're helping each other out.
So, but what if you are homosexual? You're with somebody who also happen to be homosexual.
I'm not saying he's right, but I'm just assuming that's probably what he has in mind.
It may be one of your first homosexual encounters, and therefore later on, if you're being interviewed and they say, how did this start? Well, I was, we were kind of mutually masturbating, and then masturbating.
I think here you have a classic example of false, causality, and we haven't gone through Kimball's Miracle of Forgiveness, but it's a pretty weird book. And I think Kimball is not sort of normal when it comes to sexuality. He has some really bizarre ideas about sexuality. I would dare even venture that he might be asexual, because in the book, he seems not to understand human sexuality at all. He just gets everything wrong. But I mean, that's a whole nother thing. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I don't know if your 94 version is a little more politically correct than the one I read, but my memory is that he indeed went even farther. So masturbation, mutual masturbation, homosexuality, bestiality. So that's
it leads into bestiality.
When he read me this afternoon, he mentions bestiality. But here's my take on Kimball. So here's a man who doesn't understand it. So where would he get most of his knowledge about it? Well, he would get it from interviewing people, and oftentimes they would send the hard cases up to the general authorities. And my understanding is Kimball was the member of the 12 who was assigned to deal with these cases. So if he starts probing into their history, I think there's going to be a natural progression. I mean, let's face it. Let's be frank. Anal sex is a pretty advanced sex practice, and not everybody who becomes a homosexual immediately jumps into that, sort of full-on sodomy. So they're going to go through a progression, and they're going to have it just like heterosexuals have. They're going to have a natural progression of what sort of sex acts they engage in. And what he's describing is sort of a normal progression if you're a homosexual male. You're going to masturbate individually, because that's what everybody does, and then eventually you're going to get a boyfriend or somebody, and you're probably going to touch each other and stuff before you go for the full Monty. And all he's describing is but of what normally happens. But what he's missing out on is he's got this weird sort of causality, because you could make the case that masturbation leads to being a general authority too, because I'm sure 95% of those guys masturbated before they became
it can lead to anything
authorities.
John.
Yeah, because it's a nonsensical argument.
Do we have the statistics about how many people actually do masturbate? Well, I
can tell you what it was when I was 11 years old.
I'm sure it hasn't changed much.
It was not what I read in an encyclopedia was that 90% of men and 60% of women.
Oh, another 10% lie.
Another 10% lie.
Glenn, you were just saying you had something. Why don't you?
You were talking about the causation, the causality in President Kimball's Miracle of Forgiveness, and I've got this quote that it's always been kind of humorous to me, but it fits this perfectly. And he starts off saying, How like the mistletoe is immorality. The killer plant starts with a sticky, sweet berry. Once rooted, it sticks and grows a leaf, a branch, a plant. It never starts mature or full grown. It always transplants an infant. Nor does immorality begin in adultery or perversion. Those are full-grown plants. Little indiscretions are the berries. Indiscretions like sex thoughts, sex discussions, passionate kissing. The leaves and little twigs are masturbation and petting and such, growing with every exercise. So it's kind of like Alma 32,
The little
the
twigs
naughty
growing.
version.
All right, so
That explains a dream I had.
so the brethren, particularly Kimball, and the miracle forgiveness
Well,
is still in it.
Broussard, we got it.
We'll get to Broussard in a second because he's going to take it up a notch. But for Kimball, masturbation was bad because it led to homosexuality. That once you started down the path of masturbation, you were going to end up committing homosexuality. Does anybody know, has there been any research in the church? Is there a higher instance of male homosexuality among Mormons than among the general populace?
I doubt that study's been done.
I've heard it anecdotally, though.
I would think if there is, it's only for opportunity. When you start locking a bunch of 19-year-old horny males together, there's, what are they called? Like the prison sex thing. I never saw any of this on my mission. I've heard people talk about this stuff. I never saw anything that I would consider sort of homoerotic. But maybe I'm not real tuned into that sort of stuff.
It's all the wrestling and pinching and slapping butts?
I didn't see any of that.
Oh.
Now,
I never saw any of that on my
That's
mission.
like the military, too. Do they have a higher instance of
I'm sure they would say they
homosexuality?
don't. But
Are we done discussing, though, the harms of masturbation? Are you sticking to this one thing about homosexuality?
No,
'Cause I think there are other harms.
No, we've got other
as well.
harms. I just wanted to drive that point home that I think for a lot of people, and it's been repeated over and over again, that masturbation led to homosexuality, and that was one of the main reasons it needed to be avoided.
That wasn't a reason I was ever given.
Well, it's interestingly enough, almost everything about masturbation in the church is aimed at men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes,
You're right.
women were oddly missing in the miracle of forgiveness, which means with men, they at least acknowledge it. With women, it is so bad, it cannot even be mentioned.
It doesn't even happen.
Well, if you think about most like bishops and stake presidents, I think they would be more comfortable asking, men and boys about masturbation than be asking women. So it might just be it's missing for want of embarrassment or whatever.
I don't know. I think that they don't like to think that women have strong sexual urges. They like to think that the men are on the prowl and the women are the prey.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, the women give pleasure, they don't receive it.
But that doesn't happen like in the young women's program,
No.
at girls' camp and things like that.
No.
They don't bring it up. And
No.
I think, I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and I think that they have discussions like that with her.
But
Well,
now
they might nowadays, but
the rules have changed. I think there's getting to be more of an acknowledgement of that. But I still see people talking about they have a special meeting where they bring all the men together and they talk about masturbation. And
the
then
women, they do the licked cupcake exercise.
No, with women, with the ones I hear about, they will talk about how to keep your man from masturbating. Like they'll train the women on how to search like internet files.
Oh, well, that's porn.
Yes.
Well, I guess that goes along with
yeah.
masturbation, yeah.
Hand in hand.
So what are the other reasons why they give why we shouldn't be masturbating?
Yeah.
Well, it dulls sensitivity to the spirit is the main one that I've heard. Because if you're focusing so much on your physical bodily pleasures, then you won't be able to feel the Holy Ghost prompting you.
And it's also like an exercise in self-control, that if you can't control your body, in the earth, how can you expect to become a god?
Right.
Yeah, I've heard that one too, yeah.
The little one that stuck with me is that it's the sin next to murder. So
Yep.
that one kind of...
Oh, because you're wasting, the abusing the procreative powers.
Right, yeah.
Oh, that's that Monty Python song, right? Every sperm is sacred. That's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, Major Bittamum on the chat says that the mission president told the guys in his zone meeting that the girls in the zone were masturbating too. He said, unfortunately, there were only 2 sisters in the meeting. They probably became a lot more popular after that.
That's funny.
All right, so should we go to Bruce R? for the A-bomb of masturbation.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's a killer quote. Okay, so he says, virtue may be lost by degrees, and chastity may be destroyed a step at a time, which is like the mistletoe argument. Immodesty, necking and petting, themselves a form of sex immorality, frequently lead to much grosser offenses. Every degree and type of lewdness, lasciviousness, and licentiousness of I don't even know if I can read this word. Concupiscence. I don't know what that word is. Prostitution and whoredoms, of sodomy, onanism. And what did you say? Onanism? Onanism.
Usually it refers to masturbation.
Well, yeah, spilling seed on the earth.
Okay, and homosexuality.
Oh, that's right. Onan was the name of the guy in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Of masturbation, incontinence, so no peeing your pants, and perversion, of rape, seduction, and infidelity, of adultery, fornication, and uncleanliness. I thought he just kind of picked every word he could think of that had to do with genitalia.
You know, I think he was masturbating as he wrote it.
All these things, as well as many others, are condemned by divine edict and are among Lucifer's chief means of leading souls to hell. Fine distinctions between them are of no particular moment and are not necessary to observance of the divine laws involved. So
that's the key sentence.
That's the key. Fine distinctions between them are of no particular moment and are not necessary to observance of the divine laws.
So for
involved.
Bruce R. McConkie, masturbation and rape are in the same category. There's no difference.
No real distinctions.
And where's the
so
part
you're
where he says
raping your own penis or vagina? Is that it?
That's why it's called self-abuse, young lady. Where's the part where he says that it's the second only to murder?
I can't find it. I'm looking and looking.
Oh, yeah. He goes on to say,
he does
of
say
course,
that.
all these sins together are second only to murder. So for Bruce R. McConkie, and I'm sure many of you have heard this repeated, you know, masturbation is worse than insert any other crime except murder here, you know?
Well, it's murdering of all those tiny little sperms that could make little babies.
It's just a weird sort of teaching. I don't know. It seems to lack any nuance. I don't know where in all they got it. Now we can go back to the Victorians and through, you know, the post-war period where there was a general cultural zeitgeist against masturbation, and I think they were riding that wave. But to go as far as McConkie went is very odd, I think.
You know, yeah, nothing dies when ladies.
Good point, Sinclair.
Yeah.
You are spot on.
Yeah. when you know, Joseph Smith, when you read his introduction or whatever, when he writes about he had his indiscretions of youth, I think it was in between his Moroni visitations, and he talks about he succumbed to the normal foibles of youth. I always wondered when I was a kid if that included masturbation.
Yeah, I did too.
In his mind. And I just would be curious to know if he had the same thoughts about it that like a McConkie does or a Hardline. I really doubt that he would be that militant.
No, it seems Joseph was kind of the hippie of all the prophets, right?
Well, he had mixed.
Free love.
I definitely think this sort of pharisaical writing would never come from Joseph Smith. You know, this is not the early sort of writing that the early way the church thought. This is something that came later, much later, where that you get really sort of pedantic and down to defining exactly what you do and exactly what you think. And I don't want to attribute this sort of stuff to Smith. He was much better than that.
Like I can imagine him feeling guilt. I mean, feeling, you know, okay, this is something that is of youth. I should not do this if I'm going to be, you know, dealing with gods and visiting angels. I mean, when I was a kid, I could imagine that. I mean, because I kind of felt that same way about myself. If I'm going to be, you know, on a mission and things like that, I shouldn't be. But, you know, so I always looked at Joseph Smith as a role model that way. But I never went so far as the hardcore McConkie type thing, or even the miracle of forgiveness stuff. But
a lot of times the only reason that they bring up not to masturbate is because you'll feel guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And then you have to wonder, why are we all feeling guilt and shame?
Yeah, but that's sort of a cop-out on their part, because they can't say that when they're installing guilt and shame
That's
into
what
people.
I'm saying.
You know?
Yeah.
Which came first?
There's no doubt that in a lot of conservative Christian movements, the LDS Church included, they want to make those sort of things very shameful for the people participating.
What good does that do? Okay, here's my question. What harm really does masturbation cause anybody?
Well, I think physiologically, I mean, we've shown it doesn't cause any problem. There's no hair on the palms. There's no blindness. There's no
hair on the
there's
palms.
no any of that stuff. And it would seem that the research would show there's no increased libido or anything like that.
Although I think sometimes it does help women to keep their libido.
There's studies that show it helps reduce prostate cancer, that it helps
Higher.
all sorts of things.
Definitely. Because as we were discussing the difference between men and women just earlier tonight, with men being a gas stove and women being electric, they take a lot of time to warm up and a lot of time to warm down. Cool down.
Yeah. So anyway, Robin and I are saying that it actually helps to keep a woman's libido running.
Yes.
The more it's being used.
Well, and I think, as long as we're talking about the positives from a female perspective, a lot of women, and especially young women in conservative movements like the Mormon Church, grew up with no idea of their anatomy, with no idea of the mechanics of an orgasm or even sex. And to introduce masturbation to them younger would have healthier effects for their relationships, I would believe.
Yeah, we discussed that in the female sexuality podcast.
So now the question does it do psychological harm? The answer seems to be, if you believe it's wrong, then it does. If you don't believe it's wrong, then it doesn't. So this is where, if we're going to wag our finger at the church on this issue, it's they create the problems associated with it. And we know that there have been suicides. There have been, I know people, honestly, I know people who don't actively participate in the church, who are otherwise believers, because they believe they can't kick masturbation. That alone.
Wow.
There's definitely a negative psychological effect. And one of the things that I've argued before with the church is, let's say if you had a bell curve of people, and this is sort of, the bell curve is how honest they are, or how much guilt they feel towards those things, how seriously they take the church. The people who are really, really super serious, they're going to do everything they can, all of this talk, to stop masturbating. Then you've got the people down at the other end who don't give a rip. They'll lie to anybody. It's the people in the middle that'll feel guilty. So the harder you press on things like masturbation, what you do is you weed out that middle group, and you have just the sort of sexual loonies like Boyd K. Packer and Spencer Kimball, who talk about things like you can control sexual urges and not have them at all. I mean, that's just lunacy in my mind. And then you get people who are manipulative, who will use the church, who don't care at all about trying to obey on any front. They'll go down their fifth of scotch and then go be the stake president the next day, because they're sociopaths. It's this middle group who might otherwise be good spiritual contributing people who say, well, I'm not worthy to take that calling. But meanwhile, the sociopaths and the weird asexuals are the ones who get promoted up in positions. So the church really sort of, by this sort of teaching that normal, everyday sexual behavior is deviant, damages its own clientele, its own basis.
John, so are you saying that everyone that's in a position of church leadership is either on one of those two extremes, and anybody that's kind of in the middle is out?
No, I wouldn't argue
it's
to that
an
extreme.
overgeneralization.
But I would think that you select for those sort of things. It's
because you've got some people that are extreme, but I don't.
I don't think across the board that way. For me growing up, I was never asked. I know a lot of people were. I was never asked if I masturbated till I got to BYU. They didn't ask that question.
Here's a general question: what callings, what things would you not be allowed to do if you were open with your bishop about being a masturbator?
And being a masturbator,
yeah, a serial masturbatist.
And this is the last point I want to make before we get to the actual text is, if you go to the church handbook of instructions, it does not mention masturbation at all. And the church, I think, has purposefully in the last 20 years or so been vague about the topic. There are no directions to bishops or stake presidents on what to do with masturbators. And I know that we shouldn't say masturbators. We should say like the membership,
everybody,
right?
Normal people.
So there are bishops
Those who like pleasure.
who will tell people they can't go to the temple. There's others who will say you need to try, and then that's where they'll leave it. And they'll say, well, it's not, so they're all across the board. And unfortunately that leads to that uneven enforcement where there's people who are otherwise, would be great contributors and worthy who are not. And there's people who are,
and who have to miss their siblings' weddings and stuff because they masturbated last month.
Right.
And how much of that do you think is self-imposed guilt, and how much is like church-imposed guilt? And,
well, it's self-imposed because of what the church teaches. They would have
or how much
zero.
of what they kind of infer that the church is teaching. Like when I think about my own situation, because I was maybe 17 or 18 years old when this was me, and I went to my bishop when I was 17, and I brought this before him. I scheduled an interview for a patriarchal blessing because I was just embarrassed to go and say, Bishop, I've masturbated. And so I did, like I hummed and hawed and I went around the thing, and then finally he was ready to give me my temple recommend, and I just had to come out with it. And I said, Bishop, I did this. And he looked at me like it was no big deal, and he's like, okay, well, He just treated it like it was nothing. And he said, well, I think you can still get your patriarchal blessing. And I was I was actually disappointed.
It's probably
that he didn't make a bigger deal about it. And even though I had my recommend to get my patriarchal blessing, I put myself under a self-imposed disciplinary action. I didn't know anything about this Mark E Petersen thing. I don't think I ever saw it until years later when the internet came around. But was that because of teachings from McConkie or just my own stuff?
Didn't they talk to you about self-abuse?
No.
He
was completely cool about it when I look at it in retrospect.
I'm talking about
I wouldn't accept it.
At other times during your growing up years, they never mentioned sexual
when
immorality.
When I was 13, they had this special thing for all the boys. They divided all the boys up as a special mutual night. And this guy was talking about pipes and factories. And I remember just sitting there through the whole thing saying, what the hell is this guy talking about? Never once mentioned masturbation, never once mentioned penis, anything that would be like real information, and I was honestly curious. Is he talking about what I think he's talking about? But I was confused. So I think for Glenn, I think it's largely a function of if your bishop's masturbating or not. If he is, he's probably going to be more lenient. But here's some of the things we got from the chat room. One of the guys said that on his mission he wasn't allowed to go to the temple with the other missionaries because of masturbation. Another individual said that in their state currently it's a 6-month waiting period if you've masturbated before you can go to the temple.
Wow.
And this is why I would lay the blame at the church for this one, for pansying out of this, for not having a policy.
Yeah, because
it allows for this sort of uneven enforcement of this.
People are going to, like you said, if the bishop is understanding and probably has struggled or has issues with masturbation himself, then he'll be a lot less strict.
But
regardless, whether
though,
he's struggling or having issues, or he's just, he doesn't see that it's a problem.
You still hit that wave head on, though, Glenn. Regardless of whether or not the bishop was lenient or another bishop would have, punished you, you knew that it was wrong just from the teachings of the church, from what your feelings were,
I
right?
felt personally.
Right. So then you felt like you weren't punished, and you wanted to punish yourself, and you wanted, you wanted those things. So regardless of whether or not we have a really cool bishop or whatever, you're still the one carrying the weight.
Yes. And in that interview that Tom did a month or so ago with the bishop, he got a lot of flack on the comment board from people saying, you're still sending confusing messages to the youth who come in. Maybe you don't give them a hard time about masturbation or not, but the church still has this message or not. But I would say, even if the bishop says it's okay, whatever the individual does, I think it's still a lot up to them. And maybe it's because of messages like we've covered with McConkie or Packer's Little Factory Talk or other things like that are out there in the ether.
I'll tell you about the first time I confessed. They were coming up on, I must have been 14. They were coming up on a Ward Temple baptism night. So, I felt bad about passing the sacrament, but I felt awful. Like it was a mortal sin to go through the temple that way. But I was not one who really wanted to confess. So I brought up my courage. I confessed. And the bishop was just sort of nonchalant about it. But he didn't tell, he said, yeah, you might want to, avoid, he just some sort of low key sort of Mark E Petersen stuff, but not nearly that bad. But he didn't like, I pronounce you clean, son. And he didn't tell me to go like do some Hail Marys or something. I went out of that interview feeling great. The best I'd felt in years in the church. But it only lasted for about 4 or 5 days till I started second guessing that again and saying, well, he didn't really tell me that I was absolved. So I came out feeling awful. And that's where I say this whole thing with the church, where they allow it to ride in that middle territory, they own some of this guilt. And unfortunately, like I said before, the suicides and other
cutting,
terrible actions.
Real self-abuse.
and maybe a lot of that comes from just being in a culture where you feel like someone has stewardship over you that can or should resolve you of your sins, instead of feeling like you can have a direct relationship with whoever, whatever, and be worthy all on your own.
Supposed to be a middleman. Intercessory.
Yeah. All right. Enough of all this talk about bopping the bacon. Are we ready to go on to the the speech? Did you have something you want to say, Robin?
My primary memory about my baptism, which I always felt so guilty because we were supposed to feel all special afterwards, and when they come for the Holy Ghost, all of that neat stuff, and all I could think about was the day before saying, this is the last day I can masturbate.
7 years old? 8 years old?
Oh yes, probably 2.
Yeah, you don't need to have a I mean, males develop in a different way with their genitalia than females do. Females are born into the world with that ability to
Yes, definitely. And I know for me, at least as a child, I had a brother who died when I was 4 years old. He was 11. And my entire family was not emotionally available at all. I was left entirely on my own for a big chunk of my life. And that was how I comforted myself. That's how I survived. It was actually a very loving act that I provided for myself for survival. So when I got a little bit older and learned, oh my heavens, what I had just done, to realize that the act of loving myself was dirty. Mm-hmm. It was really kind of a rotten thing. Mm-hmm.
So where do you think you learned at 7 years old that baptism meant you couldn't or weren't supposed to do that anymore?
Well, because I knew it was wrong, because every time my parents saw me, they kind of went a little crazy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I recognized there was something wrong with it as soon as my parents caught me. But
Gotcha. Yeah.
All right, you guys ready to take a look at the talk here? So for those following along at home, I'm looking at the text. We talked in the beginning, there are multiple texts. The Dolphin, LDOLPHIN.org/Mormon.html. Seems to be a fairly consistent content of the talk or letter or whatever the heck it was.
Whoever wrote this is like genius. I mean, these are so fun. I couldn't even come up with something more just ridiculous about masturbation than this.
It reads like something from The Onion. It reads like parody. It really does.
Yes,
and if it hadn't been around for so long, you would think it was.
But that's what makes me wonder. I mean, it's just what makes me skeptical of the whole thing. Like, really? But go ahead and read them.
It's so
go
fun.
Ahead.
But like we said in the beginning, even if they're not, they have been sucked up into the general zeitgeist. So,
and there has been probably somebody who has tried every single one of these steps numerous times.
Yeah. So there's 8 steps to self-control. Then there's 21 suggestions. So let's start with our 8 steps to self-control. Never touch the intimate parts of your body except during normal toilet processes.
No way. There's no way, John.
Avoid being alone as much as possible. Find good companion and stay find good company and stay in this company. No, you know that this is in the White Bible.
Except during normal toilet processes.
There were missionaries who said
this is
the only time
who's intentionally trying to satirize like
I don't
prophet
think
speak.
so.
How else would you say it?
This
Len?
is an old guy writing this.
This is
No
Boy
way.
K. Packer.
No way. I can't accept it. Except during normal toilet processes.
How would you say that, Glenn?
Yeah,
in a more.
if you were 90 years old, how would you
Touch
write
the
that?
intimate parts of your body except during normal toilet processes? I just can't. No, come on.
What do you want him to say? Unless you're wiping your
Yes,
your
actually.
tushy?
I don't know. It's just fishy to me. And until I see an original document, it's just going to be fishy to me. I've just got these red
you're
flags.
You're
That's
allowed
all.
to have those feelings.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
like I said, I agree that these sentiments are out there, but to really attribute this to this one person that was delivered in this way in a pamphlet or
you're just
writing
quibbling
thing.
over language because that is in the missionary handbook right now.
Is it?
Yes, it says you're not allowed to be alone.
I'm talking about except during normal toilet processes. That just seems absurd.
When do you think you should touch your intimate parts of your body, Glenn?
I'm talking.
What would be an abnormal toilet
During
process,
normal
Glenn?
toilet processes seems
We're
absurd.
crossing a few boundaries here.
All right. Number 2.
Sorry, bud.
If you are associated with other persons having this same problem, you must break off their friendship. Never associate with other people having the same weakness. Don't suppose that two of you will quit together. You never will. You must get away from people of that kind. Just being in their presence will keep your problem foremost in your mind. The problem must be taken out of your mind, for that is where it really exists. Your mind must be on other and more wholesome things.
My first thought about this one is I decided to look at Sons of Helaman just to torture myself today. And
Tell us what Sons of Helaman is.
it's actually an officially sanctioned group. Oh, I'll tell you what what they say. Conquering morality challenges pre and post mission. And it's specifically about masturbation and porn addictions for young men. Of course, I don't know. I'm not sure they want to introduce the women.
Now, you said porn addiction. I want to be clear that when the church says porn addiction, they mean porn usage.
I absolutely understand that.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
Oh, to our audience.
Yeah, they don't make any distinction between addiction and just...
Yes, definitely. And so this idea, and it's kind of funny because right in here it says, don't associate with anyone like that. They might actually tell you they feel that way too, and you might feel normal for just a moment. Anyway, but part of their whole program is the camaraderie, because you meet with other male masturbators who are trying to prepare for a mission. And sometimes, and I've heard they have a group of mothers that meet separately.
Wow.
Ooh. Nothing like having your mother there discussing your masturbation.
Well, I know that when I read this one, I just thought, because for me, after one of those interviews to go to the temple like John had, and I had confessed about my masturbation, I came out and I felt really horrible. And then one of my friends said, so, was there anything you had to talk to the bishop about? And I was like, it was really, embarrassing. And then he said, well, I had to. And so we finally came around to telling each other, and wow, what a relief that was, and what a support we were to each other. It wasn't harmful at all. So I think this number 2 is just bizarre.
Well, I want to get to number 3 because that's what I have a big problem with.
I before we go to that, for me, for number 2, this seems very contrary, because I had several people who part of their friendship and part of their friendship building was confessing their masturbation and actually saying, will you help me with this? And they felt that bringing this out in the open was a way of conquering it.
Right. So number 2.
I think it was really promiscuous disclosure, and we know LDS folks seem to be prone to that. And even ex-Mormons.
Well, I think that this is a standard technique of control. You don't want people to communicate this because then people will think it's normative behavior.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 3. When you bathe, do not admire yourself in the mirror.
John.
Never stay in the bath for more than 5 or 6 minutes, just long enough to bathe and dry and dress, and then get out of the bathroom and into a room where you have some member of your family present.
I can't believe
If you sit in the tub for more than 5 or 6 minutes.
Do not admire yourself in a mirror. It just seems like whoever wrote this, whoever concocted this, was very aware of the, what you mentioned, John, the whole homophobic language in a President Kimball type thing, and they were playing to that in here.
Yeah, Mark E Petersen.
Yeah, because we're going to construct a pseudo witness in Mark E. Petersen, somebody who's homophobic. So we're going to put this in here, somebody who would say, "Don't admire yourself in a mirror." But
he would say that.
I can't imagine that's real.
All right, are you done, Buzz Killington?
Go ahead.
All right. Number 4, when in bed, if that is where you have your problem for the most part, dress yourself for the night so securely that you cannot easily touch your vital parts, and so that it would be difficult and time-consuming for you to remove those clothes. By the time... I'm sorry.
Actually, you're so busy laughing, but this is heartbreaking.
By the time you started to remove protective clothing, you would have sufficiently controlled your thinking that the temptation would leave you.
John, I'm glad you have a lot of restrictive clothing right now.
Yeah, me too. Oh, man. So I guess...
Hey, can I do a buzzkill?
Zip up.
There's
I
ways
want a
around that.
buzzkill. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
One of my memories of 7th grade, we had this crazy speaker for some reason. I have no idea what she was qualified to talk about besides crazy. And she told us about 2 children she adopted, little tiny children, 2 or 3 years old, who had this horrible masturbation problem. But she told us about 7th graders. She's telling 7th graders about putting them in very restrictive onesies and safety pinning them together. And I'm like, those poor children, they've gone through hell probably. And to take away their one comfort, the one way they can feel better, what a meanie.
All right, number 5. If the temptation seems overpowering while you are in bed, get out of bed and go to the kitchen and fix yourself a snack.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it is the middle of the night, and even if you are not hungry, and despite your fears of gaining weight, the purpose behind the suggestion is that you get your mind on something else. You are the subject of your thoughts, so to speak.
I want to see somebody out there make an amendment to this, and please put out a list of very detailed which snacks to avoid.
Bananas and
avoid the bananas, avoid hot dogs. All the things that you cannot make as a snack. But
apple
what are the acceptable snacks? If somebody's really going to get creative with the next Mark E Petersen thing, I want to say cucumbers. Who's saying this?
I have to
we're reading the list here. The list.
Glenn, that the part that says, "And despite your fears of gaining weight," sounds a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, well, because this is somebody who's admiring themselves in a mirror. You don't want to gain weight with your midnight snack. It's a disincentive to overpowering temptations. Oh, come on. I mean, I do admit this is a very fun. There's so much appeal to this. I mean, that's why this thing has lasted, and it continues in multiple variations. But
the sad thing is that a lot of people believe that these could actually work. That if they go and get themselves a snack, then their masturbation fix for the night is over. They don't have to worry about it anymore.
It just makes a bigger mess.
Whipped cream.
Number 6. Never read pornographic material. Never read about your problem. Keep it out of mind. Remember, first a thought, then an act.
Oh, we're reading about it.
The thought pattern must be changed. You must not allow this problem to remain in your mind. When you accomplish that, you soon will be free of the act. And this is where I say, I mean, to a degree that's true, probably. But, I heard it said a little while ago, our language evolved in us about, maybe 12,000 years ago. Probably a lot of our modern acts in the last, 100,000 years. But sex goes all the way back. The sex drive in the human being is billions of years old. And you just can't will your way out of that sort of stuff. You can control it. I'm not saying we don't have self-control, but you can't by pretending that your mind is a stage or anything, will yourself not to have sexual urges.
Yeah, this is self-abuse. To say, never read about your problem. keep it out of your mind. I mean, you just the contortionism that you'd have to do.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
everybody right now. Don't think about bananas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not possible.
John.
And stop reading this.
Yeah, and stop reading this right now. Because
Okay. Number 7, put wholesome thoughts into your mind at all time. Read good books, church books, scriptures, sermons of the brethren. Make a daily habit of reading at least one chapter of scripture, preferably from one of the 4 Gospels in the New Testament, or the Book of Mormon. The 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, above anything else in the Bible, can be helpful because of their uplifting qualities. So when you see stuff like this, Glenn, you still think this is a big jokester writing all this?
Absolutely. The more I read of it, the more convinced I become.
All right. 8, pray. But when you pray, don't pray about this problem, for that will tend to keep it in your mind more than ever. Pray for faith. Pray for understanding of the scriptures. Pray for the missionaries, the general authorities, your friends, your families. But keep the problem out of your mind by not mentioning it ever. Not in conversation with others, not in your prayers. Keep it out of your mind. Where's the one?
Yeah, don't think about the problem as you're praying. Just think very hard about not thinking about it. But don't think too hard about thinking about not thinking about it, because then you're thinking about not thinking about it will just lend you to think about not thinking about it even more. And God thinks that's pretty bad. So why don't you just think about that?
Major Bittabom?
No, New Order 13.1 received a copy of this from his mission president when he told the mission president about his problem with masturbation.
So you get a copy of some piece of folklore from another authority figure, and you go, okay, well,
then
it
it's
must
no
be true.
longer folklore.
That's my point from the beginning.
Real.
Yes, it is.
It's real.
It doesn't matter. It's like you're saying Mormons don't really believe in Adam and Eve because there was no Adam and Eve. That's a false construction. They do believe in Adam and Eve. The fact
they do
that
believe in this.
The Adam and Eve were not
you've
real.
got the Adam and Eve story in the temple. So does that make it more real?
So if we say
story?
Mormons believe in these points, at least some of them do. You're saying no, they can't because somebody wrote this other than Mark E Petersen. That's irrelevant.
I'm suspicious until I see the original from Mark E Petersen. Maybe he did.
So once it's distributed,
Glenn, it doesn't matter who wrote it. It matters that it's being distributed to people who have a masturbation issue as a solution.
And it's still folklore. I
From
mean,
the church.
You're thinking of a different definition of folklore than I am. But it's still
it may
folklore.
be, but some people are accepting it.
Where's I need a drop for a Tom sigh. What does it matter that it's folklore? I mean, it's obviously taken as gospel truth by some. It's distributed as if it's real. So, and that makes it real.
What I mean by folklore is that this has been created by someone other than who it's being attributed to in Mark E. Petersen, and it's continually being updated and changed. Like you look at all of the multiple versions that are on there, there's no consistency in actually what's on. I mean, there's different versions that are out there. So which version did the mission president give the guy that wrote it on the board?
The basic suggestions are the same.
Sure.
But
there's
versions.
changes on it.
Okay, but it's basically the same idea.
I agree. I think I said it really nicely at the beginning. I don't remember exactly what I said. The sentiments are definitely part of the culture, and it's like this revolving door.
So I mean, but the whole church is that way. I mean, I don't understand why it's a relevant point. Everything in the church is that way. It all gets passed along from one person
and
to
changed.
the other.
It's just this man-made stuff.
Okay, but everybody accepts everybody, but people accept.
I don't think this is a Mark E. Petersen creation.
You said that, Glenn.
I think it's a hoax.
Okay, it's a hoax.
Beating a dead horse.
It's a hoax, Glenn. Let's read it.
I don't know. You read Mark E. Petersen. He's got some other singers out there.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I've been wrong about other things.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So are you done with the hoax thing?
You brought it up.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, some of these are fun. We don't want to miss them. Let's get moving.
They're awesome. Keep going.
Okay. Suggestions. Let's skip down to suggestions. Number 1, pray daily. Ask for the gifts of the Spirit, that which strengthen you against temptation. Pray fervently and out loud when the temptations are the strongest. I guess the only thought I'd like to interject at this point is, again, it's this juxtaposition of spirituality versus sexuality. And actually, I think Mormons can be quite progressive on this front. You know, because I think if you looked at modern Mormon teachings, it's like sex is good, have lots of sex, but only after you're married.
And to make babies.
Well, I don't even think that's around anymore. You know, that 20 years ago, yeah, that would have been the case. It would have been, no birth control, sex about procreation. You're going to be hard pressed to find people who say that today. They're still out there, but that's not a mainstream church teaching anymore. But here again, they're saying prayer is over here, masturbation is over here. You can't be a sexual being and be a prayerful being in the same instance. Number 2, follow a program of vigorous daily exercise. The exercise reduces emotional tension and depression are absolutely basic to the solution of this problem. Double your physical activity when you feel stressed increased.
That probably would be the most helpful thing on the list.
Depends on where you go exercise.
and where you're doubling your activity.
Seem less clownish. They seem less over the top than a guide to self-control.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I had a mission companion that would do jumping jacks in the middle of the night.
There you go.
Yeah, I had one that did push-ups all the time.
Wow.
You guys were just too hot for them, I suppose. All right, 3. When the temptation to masturbate is strong, yell "stop" to those thoughts as loudly as you can in your mind, and then recite a pre-chosen scripture or sing an inspirational hymn. It is important to turn your thoughts away from the selfish need to indulge. Set goals of abstinence. Begin with a day, then a week, month, year, and finally commit to never doing again. Until you commit yourself to never again, you will always be open to temptation. This is, I'm speaking just from personal experience. The longer you go, the more the drive to do so is overpowering. If you don't do it, you'll have nocturnal emission. It's like you can't get away from it as a male. So in a way, to me, masturbation is like a sex control, like a release valve, a sex control device. Otherwise, you can start getting...
Everything looks like sexy things. Yeah. Every person is like a turn on, and every doorknob looks tempting.
I'm not.
But don't you just get to a point where you just don't think about it?
No.
Are we talking? Is that a question for me? Don't think about what?
Well, like if you're setting goals for abstinence, like I had a friend that made like a scripture snake type thing where he took construction papers, one for every day, and hung it up in his room, and like setting these very obvious physical goals where it was always right there in front of him, and keeping that right there in front of him, it was always there. But when you stop thinking about it, I mean, I'm just going by personal experience too. It's not, I don't know. It just seems like it's not a big deal. Like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. A nocturnal emission, what's the big deal?
Well, Glenn, I have a question.
Yeah.
What helped you stop thinking about it? What were the techniques you used?
It didn't worry me anymore. Like I just didn't care.
So is it you gave yourself permission?
Yeah. What do you mean you didn't care?
It didn't matter if it happened or if it didn't.
That's the key.
So, yeah. If you care, then you can't...
Wait, it didn't matter if what happened or didn't. Are you talking about nocturnal immersions? Or?
I'm talking about masturbation. I'm talking about like setting goals of abstinence. But even...
Wait.
Because I'm thinking back like as a missionary, and like there were times where I would set... Because what you were talking about, John, was how the longer that you go of abstinence, the harder that it is to stay, because there's like a drive to do it again. Isn't that what you said?
It increases over.
It's anticipation. Even with sex, it works.
But my experience with that is that if I just stopped thinking of, like, if I kept track and I'm like, okay, I'm going on day 35, I'm going on day 36, I'm going on day 37. If I stopped keeping track of that, it just like
I didn't keep track. All I'm saying is, and I'm only speaking for me. I'm no biologist or sex therapist or anything. That for me, my sex drive will keep increasing.
So, Glenn, you're arguing against suggestion number 4, that by trying to keep track and setting goals and stuff actually makes it harder to stay abstinent. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I found that for me, just kind of once I stopped caring about it, it just wasn't a big deal anymore.
I think you are right on as far as not caring.
And that's how a lot of sexual impulses go.
But it's also physical. I mean...
But it was kind of... I'm sorry, Rich.
Well, it's not compulsive.
Kind of like letting go of all of this.
And I guess I'm bringing up a lot of mission stories, but I was privy to a conversation. So the mission president's wife in my mission, as in probably most, is in charge of the healthcare. and the well-being of the missionaries. One certain elder physically couldn't do any work, couldn't walk, was in physical pain, had to go to the doctor. And the doctor says, well, you need to masturbate. And that's what the whole problem for him was. And I sat there and listened to the mission president's wife say, but I mean, don't do that. I mean, obviously you can't, he's going to tell you to do this. Don't do that, obviously. But
were there any other options for the cure?
Eat bananas. And I don't know what relevance that is.
Could you get a double cure if you combine the two?
I think you could. So, and this wasn't for me, but there were probably 4 elders that I knew on the mission that had physical ailments for not being able to have this release. And I guess nocturnally it just wasn't happening for them naturally or what.
And I think, going back to the first question that was asked, John, is there really harm in this? Once you kind of let go and you go, there really isn't. It's really not harmful. And if you can get past like the whole worthiness thing, like my self-policing, then all of this, setting goals of abstinence begin with the day and a week and stuff, all the stuff.
I agree. That's a healthy attitude, but the church doesn't have that healthy attitude.
No. Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Number 5, change in behavior and attitude is most easily achieved through a change in self-image. Spend time every day imagining yourself strong and in control, easily overcoming tempting situations. So repeated the same thing. And once again, I would say sex drive is more chemical than it is a will to power. 7. Be outgoing. 6. Begin to work daily on a self-improvement program. Relate this plan to improving your church service. To improve your relationships with your family, God, and others, strive to enhance your strengths and talents. And this is the standard Sunday school answer again. The solution to every problem is to pay your tithing and pray and read your scriptures, right?
Obey and service.
7, be outgoing and friendly. Force yourself to be with others and learn to enjoy them. As long as they're not masturbators, apparently, though, because that's number 1.
Gotta avoid them.
Screen your friends wisely.
Learn to enjoy working and talking to them. Use principles of developing friendship found in books such as How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I've read that book. It's kind of a little Machiavellian. Anyway. Okay. 8, be aware of situations that depress you or cause you to feel lonely, bored, frustrated, or discouraged. These emotional states can trigger the desire to masturbate as a way of escape. Plan in advance to counter these low periods through various activities, such as reading a book, visiting a friend, doing something athletic.
But, just the idea of masturbating can cause you to feel those ways, and then you have to masturbate to feel better.
I was going to say, I can understand that advice, but I would tell them reverse. If somebody came to me and said, I'm lonely, bored, and frustrated, I'd say, have you masturbated lately?
Exactly.
Maybe that's the problem.
Well, and one point is it seems like many of these seem to be giving you a roadmap to run away from your discomfort or feelings. And are the feelings really going to go away if you keep running? I mean, feel them. That's the best way to get rid of them.
What a good release masturbation is for some of those things, and then
right,
you feel
that's
better.
true, and that really has, and I really don't think masturbation has to do with it, but they're taking very normal things about people that you have stress, you have problems, you have traumas that crop up, you feel uncomfortable, and they're telling you, you need to masturbate.
Right, it triggers the desire to masturbate.
All right, let's get back into the crazy ones. Number 9.
I did read a study a few years ago that suggested, and I wish I had a reference on this, that masturbation can actually increase a sense of loneliness and desire if it makes somebody feel like they're not worthy of being with somebody else. I mean, if they already feel alone by themselves, so there could be some merit there.
Well, everyone's individual. If it hurts you, don't do it. If you love it, go ahead.
Yeah. But I think if it hurts you, don't do it is good advice. But, almost everybody has some aspect of their life they're not fully in control on. And, like if you overeat, you can feel like terrible every time you overeat. But at some point, it's going to be more healthy to say acceptance. You need to work on the problem.
Yes.
And I would say everybody's got something like that. But sometimes it's the healthier thing to do, say, that's okay. I am what I am. I'm going to work on that problem, but I accept it. And I think that's kind of what Glenn was saying about when he stopped keeping his calendar.
Right. But overeating is more harmful than masturbation. So it's not that great.
Well, and one part of this is the idea, it seems recently in social work fields, this idea of harm reduction. You can't do harm elimination because it's almost self-defeating. You can't completely eliminate things, or at least if you're shooting for that, you hurt yourself. But if you just concentrate on reduction, so if you smoke a pack a day, try smoking one fewer.
Right. Instead of completely stressing about the fact that you're, still smoking, celebrate the fact that you're smoking less than you were last week.
Yeah. And if it was harmful, and where, of course, masturbation isn't.
Yeah. And to reiterate, the only harm on masturbation is if you think it's bad.
Right. That's what causes the guilty feelings.
Okay, number 9, make a pocket calendar for a month on a small card. Carry it with you, but show it to no one. If you have a lapse of self-control, color the day black. Your goal will be to have no black days. The calendar becomes a strong visual reminder of self-control and should be, or lack thereof, should be looked at when you're tempted to add another black day. Keep your calendar up until you have at least 3 clean, clear months.
So once you color it black, then you're free. That's like a free pass for the rest of the day, right?
You might. I wonder what happens to me every Tuesday.
Good point.
It's horrible.
To me, this is the antithesis of what they were saying up here before. They're saying don't think about it and to have it track it.
Yeah. Well, they did say set goals and keep track, so that goes along with that one.
But just that process of scribbling out that day, I lost this day. You know what I mean?
It is no good to
That's
me.
a sad thing, really.
What I did with my calendar...
That's horrible.
I'm sorry, Rich. I would keep...
No, you're fine. I'd like to hear about your calendar, Glenn.
Well, no, I had percentages of and so the masturbation was just one of listening to, because this was all stuff I was doing when I was a missionary. And so it was listening to music was one thing and masturbation was another, and whatever other mission rules, we had to shine our shoes every day or eat wheat cereal every day. So there were all these things. And if I did them all, I got 100%.
Oh,
and so
Glenn,
it was,
poor thing.
I know, that was me. So I would have 4 days of 100% and then it would go down to 90% and 70%. And I used code words. So if anybody saw my calendar, they wouldn't know which one I didn't achieve, because I didn't want to be embarrassed if somebody knew that I wasn't shining my shoes.
So now we know why.
Or if I was.
You are so
dropped
naughty.
off in Japan because Glenn wasn't shining his shoes and was shining other parts.
That's right.
All right. Number 10, a careful study will indicate you have had the problem at certain times and under certain conditions. Well, I was joking about this. They're serious. Try and recall in detail what your particular time and conditions were. Now that you understand how it happens, plan to break the pattern through counter activities.
Counters work sometimes.
All right. Robin, you said you wanted to read number 11?
I sure do. This is one of my faves. Okay, number 11. In the field of psychotherapy, there is a very effective technique called aversion therapy. When we associate or think of something very distasteful with something which has been pleasurable but undesirable, the distasteful thought and feeling will begin to cancel out that which is pleasurable. If you associate something very distasteful with your loss of self-control, it will help you to stop the act. For example, if you are tempted to masturbate, think of having to bathe in a tub of worms and eat several of them as you do the act. It sounds goofy, but it actually works.
You've tried it.
No, this is how fetishes are made, folks. You don't want to have to think of eating worms to be able to orgasm.
Well, the church is big on aversion therapy. That's what the whole shock therapy at BYU when they were lighting up the homosexuals in the 70s.
And not just BYU.
And it doesn't work, in case anybody's wondering. Aversion therapy is...
No, I actually worked with one of the clinical monitors who gathered some of the data for the clinical study that they used to prove the worms, and that put together one of the acceptance criteria on that.
Is that a euphemism?
No, well, they asked, do you love worms or do you hate worms? And if they actually loved worms, they wouldn't let them into the study.
Huh, interesting.
It's true.
All right, 12. During your toilet and shower activities, leave the bathroom door or shower curtain partly open to discourage being alone in total privacy. Take cool, brief showers. this doesn't help your companion's masturbation efforts at all. If you're like showering with the door open and everybody can see you, you know, about a little team spirit here. Cold showers, really? Okay.
Cool, brief showers.
I had a companion that once tried to break out of his shower. He was in there for like 3 seconds and threw open the door and expected to just see me with like concubines or something.
He's going to catch.
Oh, he was trying to catch. He had his suspicions. It was awesome.
Okay, let's see. Where are we at? We're at number 13. Arise immediately in the mornings. Do not lie in bed awake, no matter what time of day it is. Get up and do something. Start each day with enthusiastic activity.
Jumping jacks again.
Yeah.
I guess 13 is the morning wood problem, I suppose, is what they're getting at here.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
14, keep your bladder empty. Refrain from drinking large amounts of fluids before retiring.
What does that have to do with anything?
Actually, it has a lot to do with things. Sorry.
But for men, what the heck?
I don't know about men.
I know for women it kind of can feel better, right? But I don't think that has anything to do with men.
My wife brought this up last night. She's an ICU nurse, and they were reading through these, and one of the male nurses there on point 14, I guess that is actually a physical thing that you can have more of an erection at night if you have a full bladder.
Really?
So there's your answer.
Wow.
I have no idea if it's credible.
And an erection always means
Oh yeah. No.
erotic.
Right.
They're taking away all our fun. Darn it.
And one of the versions, and I was trying to find it earlier when you were asking me the question, John. That's why I was a little distracted. I couldn't find it, but it gave much more detail on 14 as to why it said keep the bladder empty. I just couldn't find it.
Okay, all kidding
What
aside,
riches?
all kidding aside, number 15. Reduce the amount of spice and condiments in your food. eat as lightly as possible at night. I thought they told us to eat like pigs. Up at number, where was it?
Yeah, don't worry about your weight. Go and eat.
Go eat.
Just don't put any
and you've heard the
ketchup
thing
on your
about
French
Tabasco
fries.
sauce, right? The Tabasco sauce is a aphrodisiac.
No.
Yeah.
It says reduce the amount of
I've heard.
condiments in your food.
It's a lot of mustard on your hot dog there, Elder.
That makes no sense. Does it make it feel better? I don't
know. All right, 16. Wear pajamas that are difficult to open, yet loose and not binding. I thought they told us to wear tight pajamas up here before. I'm getting confused.
Difficult to open is the key. Buttons, lots of buttons.
Number 17. Avoid people, situation, pictures, or reading material that might create sexual excitement. Okay. People. Sorry. I don't know. Number 18. It is sometimes helpful to have a physical object to use to overcome this problem, like a riding crop. Is that
That's my fave.
A Book of Mormon held firmly in hand, even in bed at night, is proven helpful.
You hold it in one hand, though. I mean, what are you doing with your other one?
All right, maybe Glenn is right. Maybe
It's okay if it's only one
maybe
hand.
somebody's making this stuff up.
Thank you. Another version has a Bible instead of the Book of Mormon, and yeah, I mean, you know, the thing with this list is it's very clever the way that this one's written, because it starts out much more believable, and as you get towards the end, it starts getting a little bit more ridiculous. Although the worms, I think, takes the cake on this one. that one's pretty.
We're about to number 19. In very severe cases, it may be necessary to tie a hand to the bed frame with a tie. Oh, you didn't mean like a necktie?
Yeah.
Okay. In order,
Kinky.
he doesn't want you buying actual like fur
No,
lined
just use your
constraints or
tie
anything.
because you're a missionary, right?
In order, the habit of masturbating in semi-sleep condition can be broken. This can also be accomplished by wearing several layers of clothing, which would be difficult to remove while sleeping.
Half asleep. Well,
By half asleep.
They're trying to get rid of the half asleep masturbation problem.
People have done this. Missionaries have done this.
What? Masturbated while they're half asleep?
No, tied their hands to the bedpost.
I believe
How do you
it.
tie both of your hands to the bedpost, and then how do you untie them?
You have your.
Are you using your
kinky
feet?
Your partner.
You just tie the action side down.
Some entrepreneurial person out there has to actually make this. like an easy, snappable
elder cuffs.
How to do that.
Velcro would maybe be handy.
Hey, bro, time me up. I just can't imagine anybody really, I don't. Set up a reward system for your success. It does not have to be a big reward. A quarter in a receptacle each time you reach a goal. Spend it on something which delights you. It will be a continuing reminder of your progress.
Something that delights you for a quarter.
Yeah,
it was $1 in one of the other ones. I'll stop.
I would worry that people would think it was a swear jar and that I had a potty mouth.
Well, and how about this? Well, my version, the one from Light Planet, says, "You can do it. The joy and strength you will feel when you do will give your whole life a glow of satisfaction and fulfillment." Isn't that afterglow? I don't know.
It's spiritual afterglow, not the... All right, number 21. Do not let yourself return to any past habits or attitude patterns that are part of your problem. Satan never gives up. Be calmly and confidently on guard. Keep a positive mental attitude. You can win this fight. The joy and strength you will feel when you do will give your whole life a radiant and spiritual glow of satisfaction.
I'm so sorry I came early.
Some people do that.
So
if Satan is like kind of the Antichrist, then wouldn't he also be kind of lazy? Maybe how do we know he doesn't give up?
I don't.
Maybe he's just kind of like maybe he is kind of lazy. I don't know. I didn't see that line in the other ones. I kind of like that line here. Satan never gives up.
You know the problem.
Maybe it is there, and I just didn't pay attention to it.
It's even in italics.
Yeah,
I know I brought this up in past podcasts, but it's worth bringing up again. The problem with the Mormon conceptualization of repentance and all that sort of stuff is, if you masturbate, you are a masturbator. If you drink alcohol, you are alcoholic. If you look at porn, you're a porn user. So the problem is masturbation, as we've mentioned over and over again, is pretty normal. It's pretty healthy. A normal, healthy young man, especially who's not in a sexual relationship, is likely going to masturbate occasionally from time to time, even if he's trying real hard. But the problem is, once he does, he can go through all this stuff and spend 8 months clean and celibate. And, he takes himself out to dinner. It's a nice meal.
Looks at himself in the mirror, admires
himself in the mirror a little bit. He's not wearing 6 layers of clothing. But my point is, he's now undone all of his repentance.
Mm-hmm.
Satan never sleeps. He's now a masturbator again.
Oh, he's worse.
Yeah, he
He's a
really
backslider.
failed this time.
Yeah, he's worse.
So as long as you have this big act of repent, you can't go to the temple, you can't do that, and you have to stop this activity, because it's not like in these sort of things you see in a lot of speeches, it's not like we want you to reduce it, hey, masturbation's not that good, try to cut back a little bit. That's not what's talking about here. It's saying you got to overcome this.
Can I share my favorite anti-masturbation story from my mission?
Please.
This is one of those supposed stories that the mission president, just before my mission president, delivered in his own conference, where he stood and said, supposedly, "Sisters, I'm standing here before you telling you, start wearing your hose. And elders, I'm standing here telling you, stop playing with yours."
Oh.
Every time an elder comes before me with the problem of masturbation, I give him a CTR ring to wear. And at this point, every elder out there in the audience that had a CTR ring sat on his hand.
Oh.
And so that's the story, the way that it was told in my mission. And whenever it was told, I heard it several times, everyone would crack up, and they just absolutely loved that story. Did you guys ever hear that?
No.
Or is this new
First
news?
time. Ladies, wear your hose and...
Yeah. I mean, that one's kind of got that nice parallel. But you've heard the thing about the CTR ring and masturbation?
No.
You haven't? Do people wear it as a deterrent?
No.
No, they give it to 8-year-olds. I've never heard that before.
People on the board? Anyone?
Maybe that's why it has the little, sliding on the other side, so it gives you a nice pinch. I don't know.
Well, when I, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people, when I was a teenager and I was masturbating, I thought every time, and I would feel horrible, and I would think, well, if as soon as I get married, then that will just totally go away. It will not be something that I would even think about or desire. And you get married and it's still present. It's still something that serves a purpose, a special purpose beyond, intercourse and relationships with someone else. It's something, it's not always just sexual. It serves another purpose, I think, a lot of times. And it's kind of healing and soothing, like Robin said.
Yeah, I would venture it's part of the very, a healthy sexual relationship. I'm not qualified to make that statement, but,
right. Because you're masturbating when you're married doesn't mean that you're not having a fulfilling sexual relationship with your partner. It's a totally different thing.
Correct. Right. And I remember seeing a family home evening manual that really incensed me, claiming that that's not okay in marriage. And I'm like, well, what if you want to do it together? That's a mutual masturbation that works. Mm-hmm. But
right, it serves many
You
purposes.
have to have radical acceptance of yourself before you can show that kind of love and acceptance to someone else in the way they truly deserve it, like you do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think for the last thought here, why did we select this talk? Obviously, as Glenn has told us over and over again, it may or may not be as real as some would have us believe. But I think attitudes about masturbation in the church and in society in general need to change. It's something that has been, and I think it is changing. It's becoming very acceptable in the media. To joke about and acknowledge masturbation. You would never see that like if you're watching TV in the 50s. So I think that's a positive change. And I think the same sort of thing needs to happen in the church. They don't need to get up and joke about it in sacrament meeting or anything. But I think it'd be healthy to take it down a few notches. Once again, there have been some serious problems and people and even out there today, there are people who are seriously suffering for something that shouldn't be an issue at all, that there is a lot of guilt and there is a lot of self-loathing. And there's a lot of people who would otherwise be great spiritual contributors who are tied up around this issue.
And they probably end up masturbating more because of that self-loathing.
Right. And the church needs to send out a letter that says something like this, from the First Presidency. Bishops can no longer ask anybody about, masturbation. That's a private thing.
Nor can they discipline.
It won't be a consideration on worthiness. Don't ask. Don't probe. Don't grope. Don't.
Did you say don't grope?
Whatever. I guess my mind.
You lost me on the probing.
My mind was somewhere else.
I think even then, I mean, there's still so much that's permeated the culture. Even bishops not asking about it. I just don't think that would be enough.
Yeah,
I think there would have to be a more proactive approach to it. I don't really see it happening, but
well, they need to stop telling kids, about self-abuse and things like this. And they should, if they're going to talk to kids about sex, they should mention masturbation as a great, safe outlet for their sexual feelings.
Well, definitely.
Well, I think it starts with the parents, with the parents. And if you are able to have maybe the support of the bishop and I don't know, who cares? I'll stop.
Let me add a little. But if you really do push the self-abuse, what's the next logical connection? What you do to yourself is considered abuse. What happens when your spouse does it? Mm-hmm. What is it then? It seems to make a logical connection that you would then start connecting that with abuse. And how healthy is that in a marriage?
Yep. I do see a growing trend. It's probably a very small movement, but among New Order Mormons who are going into interviews with their children, who say, I'm not going to allow the bishop to interview my 13-year-old daughter unattended. And I think that's probably a good move. If I was going to give people advice, I would say that. If you're still in the church, it's not a bad idea to sit there and say, there's nothing, bishop, that you can't ask in front of me. And then if he asks something like that, say, don't ask about that. Because I do think that to be healthy in any relationship, you need boundaries. And for so long, the church has abused their boundaries, and they need to reestablish good, healthy boundaries with their membership. And this is one that the church needs to stay the hell out of it. It's none of their business, and it doesn't cause any problems, and it's just stupid and it's just silly.
Amen.
All right. Anybody have any last minute thoughts on the sin that dare not mention its name?
I'm grateful for music. It helps me feel understood. Thank you. And I'm grateful to gratitude itself. Thank you. It helps me look for the good. Thank you. Look for the good. Thank you. Thank you. I look for the good. Thank you. Thank you. Look for the good.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Throne.